It's not an exaggeration to say that the Enneagram gave me my father back. It's huge. It helped me understand him in a really deep way. It's almost like I got an operating manual to who this person is.
Welcome to Created Creative. I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ruth.
How was your interview on local television?
Oh,
Wasn't that just now?
well, yeah, it was supposed to be. But
Oh.
listen to that.
It didn't happen?
Okay, so these people who had arranged it from the church, they were like, okay, the newscaster's coming at 1 p.m. and they're going to be interviewing a bunch of people, and we definitely want them to talk to you. But then she had so many people to interview, they didn't even get to me.
But also, looking up, you're having this major rummage sale, and I assume they're having the interviews to advertise the rummage sale?
It was, but mostly, I mean, I think the people that they interviewed, I'm glad that they interviewed because it was a lot talking about the history of it because it's 30th anniversary. These are people that were there when it started. So, like, I'm glad they were talking to them. It's just, why do you tell
Deeply
me?
invested.
Yeah. The only thing I didn't like was, why did you even include me from the start? But anyway, it mattered.
Live
It was fine.
television, there's just no telling.
Yeah. And I did end up having a nice time visiting with a lot of people. So I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I looked great because that's always good.
You're seeing everyone. And then you had reported in our Artist Way accountability group that there were an abundance of live, laugh, love pillows and wall hangings.
They all sold.
What? No.
Yeah.
What? So enough people want to get rid of them that you commented on the number and other people bought them.
Yeah. They've all now been redistributed to the community.
And
to
the
other
money came to the
houses.
church or whatever charity you're supporting with this.
Yeah, it's kind of cool how 40% goes to missions far away and 30% to local missions, and then they keep 30% for our own.
Yeah.
I love that they give away so much of it. But yeah, the Live, Laugh, Love, it went fast.
Wow.
So this morning, it started at 8 o'clock, and some of the people who were working it were there by 6:30, and there were already people lined up
Of
for
course
this
there were.
rummage sale. Yeah.
I mean, 30 years in, the word would be out that this is the place.
Yeah, this is a big rummage sale. And there's people that come every year and they know exactly the area where we keep the nicer stuff, that they want to go to that room. And
I tried to go to a church rummage sale at the
Yeah.
Episcopal Church like a year ago, but they didn't allow strollers and she was
Oh.
asleep. And I was like, well,
Shoot.
I'm like-
Oh, you would have been very welcome at our rummage sale.
with a stroller.
Yeah. And it's kind of cool because they really do organize this one well. There's,
It's another reason it's popular.
by sizes and
Yeah.
like very nice. So say it's going good. And then tomorrow the rummage sale continues and then there's an auction. There's like cars that have been donated.
Do you get one
Yeah.
of those auctioneers that
Yeah.
like sells cattle and stuff?
Yeah, a real auctioneer and from somewhere in North Dakota.
Oh, they come from North Dakota because you're
Yeah.
not selling enough cattle in northern Minnesota to have an auctioneer?
It's probably some connection.
Yeah.
And then there's a silent auction as well. So there were a bunch of liquor baskets. And of course, those are the ones that people bid on the most. And then lots of businesses have contributed gift certificates. So I bid on 2 things. We'll see if I get
But in the silent auction,
I won't know till tomorrow. Yeah.
anything could happen.
Anything could happen.
Exciting. That's rummage.
Yes, it's the talk of the area. But
Right?
I was very peopled out by 2 o'clock, so I left. Yeah.
And now you're going to talk to me.
Yeah. You don't come.
I'm not
easy
people.
to your friend. You're not your
Yeah,
friend.
you don't have to have the same level of energy to talk to someone you know.
Yes. Have you even figured out
Figuring-
the artist's way?
I
And this,
have. Recovering a sense of power, I believe, is week 3.
yeah. There was lots of quotable things in this chapter. Like, the universe will reward you for taking risks on its behalf.
Do you feel that the universe has rewarded you for taking risks?
I do think so. Yeah. For being willing to try. Being
Yes.
willing to try. Yeah.
Yes.
When you get an idea and you actually take steps in that direction, and then the way starts to appear.
Do you have a good story?
I wish I.
So I don't know if it's synchronicity. One time I was flying and thinking I want to do a side gig or something. I turned my phone back on when we landed and somebody had contacted me about a side gig.
Yeah. See, I love things like that.
Oh, that's awesome. I just wish I could control when these things are happening.
Yeah, like there are those times of lostness where you don't feel like the synchronicity is happening. I wonder what that is about. Is that
So how do you get back in line? Because I need you right now. I need
Oh.
but sort of manifest. Can we go from synchronicity to manifesting?
Sure.
Or
We can do
whatever
whatever we
word.
want.
I feel like I easily manifest people. I
Yeah.
was stressed about, I have to do like an extra medical test. I'm totally fine. They just, whatever. So next Wednesday, and my regular person to hang with, Lucy, is out of town. And I was like, I don't even know who to ask. It's longer than just kind of bridging that with a neighbor. It's not just like a half an hour.
Yeah.
Longer. So then somebody did kind of pop up out of the blue. I mean, someone I know well enough that I'm like, do you want to with her while I'm doing this?
Oh,
And she's
good.
like, of course. And I said, this has been stressing me out. And she's like, don't let it. I'm right here.
Yeah.
But I manifest people quite easily,
Yeah.
but not other things.
Yeah. I think people like to know that they can be helpful, it seems. Like people, when they're called upon, they're like, oh, I'm needed. I'm curious. Are you still continuing to follow your curiosity in the artist dates?
So tomorrow, I think we're going to go to Shakespeare in the park. And do I need to just be labeling some of these events? Or we went to the more fun, cute, better ice cream today, and it was an adventure, and she loves the bus and in the different neighborhood. And then I was like, ooh, there's other fun stores on this block. What are they?
So much. Yeah. I'm still continuing the painting. I haven't done a lot yet because it's been so crazy, but I've done that, and that is fun. And then also, I have been doing my morning pages really consistently the last few days. So
Good.
that. Yeah, I guess, would you say that the chapter,
Well, it's called Power.
things that spur you forward, sometimes that's anger,
I
sometimes
do.
that's...
I mean, I feel like it's in the book building an argument of like, first it's own this identity and then take action, growth.
Yeah, there's all these things that we think of as bad, but then they can spur us forward. How do you think that the Enneagram associates anything that we've talked about?
Power. Enneagram 3s love their power. Unhealthy Enneagram 3s are gathering it up all the time and hiding any weakness.
Oh my gosh. So that's, lines up perfectly then.
It does.
Yeah. I really enjoyed talking with Stephanie. I think that she's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the Enneagram, and anybody who can attend one of her courses that she's doing is really going to be in for a treat.
And there's one like now, so we'll put a link because everyone should go.
Yes. So enjoy this episode
sorry.
with Stephanie.
Good to see you again, Dawn. And nice to meet you, Ruth.
This is awesome.
Dawn, I remember you from Luther Seminary. And Ruth, I've seen your name forever.
I feel like I know you because I've seen your name.
Yeah,
And
it's a small world.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thanks for doing
is
this,
pretty cool.
and thanks for having me.
well, we're so excited. And would you mind taking a moment and introducing yourself to our listeners?
Yes. My name is Stephanie Lape, and I live in Southern California with my husband and my golden retrievers. We have 2 children, and they're kind of leaving the nest. So we're in that transition. I'm a pastor. I serve at Cross and Crown Lutheran Church in Rancho Cucamonga, and that's a real place that people ask. I'm a former comparative religions professor, and so I still love working with interfaith groups and doing comparative religion things. I'm a public speaker. I've spoken at the Parliament of the World's Religions a couple of times. I wrote a book, and I write for a couple of magazines, and I teach the Enneagram. I think that we're probably going to talk about the Enneagram today, and that is just one of the great loves of my life. Those are some of the things I do.
Yeah. How old are your kids then?
One is 25, and he is completely living on his own. He's a musician. He just released an album, so he's super excited about it.
Exciting.
Yeah. And he's the music director at the church where I am as well, which is cool. And then my daughter is 21, and she's about to fly the nest. She's a college student, and she works, and she's an artist, and she's wonderful.
I was just curious because mine are just graduating high school and just out of high school. And when you said flying the nest, that's kind of where I'm at too, although I don't know how soon it'll be.
It's such a transition as a mother, just like, oh my gosh, how do I do this part of life now? So I put all of my helicopter parenting onto my golden retrievers. They're the ones that have to do as I'm trying to let my kids do their own thing.
And you were a comparative religions professor.
Yeah. For 13 years in a city called Riverside. I loved it. I felt at the time the call from God to go to seminary and be a pastor, which is what I had felt when I was much younger, and I put that kind of on the back burner. And then the call strongly emerged to the point where I was like, all right, God, you win, So I'm super glad I did. It's been an incredible journey. And this is what I wrote about in my book, just the journey of faith, as we all have these journeys that are not linear. Most of us, we go through these winding paths. And yet when we look back, we see that God actually has greater intelligence. Who knew?
Yeah.
And you have been prepared for the thing that feels out of left field.
It's true. true.
because of all the previous.
It's true. And the people that I know that go into second careers, it's not like the first career or first life path is lost. It's like something from that is now also used in the next chapter. It's amazing.
Yes.
So how does a degree and experience with comparative religions feed into being a parish pastor?
In so many ways. The most obvious thing is that I teach comparative religions in every church where I serve, because I had this experience and people love learning it. And I'm involved in interfaith groups and I go and speak because I love public speaking. So I go and speak at the mosques, the Buddhist temples, things like that, lead field trips to synagogues and all kinds of things. But beyond that, just an understanding of spirituality, it's broad, when you learn who your neighbors are. And I mean, I believe now in New York and Minnesota, you see it as much as I do in California. The world is smaller in a sense than it used to be. My grandparents just had to ask, can the Catholics and Baptists get along? But now we have to ask, who are the Wiccans? And can I deal with my Muslim neighbors and things like that? The sense of who our neighbors are, what spirituality means, all these big questions. I can't imagine living without this basic understanding of our neighbors. The world's too small to be provincial and just really narrow about who we know ourselves to be, because we're going to make enemies everywhere. That's just not necessary. But if we have just basic education, we'll understand like, oh, they're not as different as I had once thought. And maybe we can learn from each other and not feel threatened by each other.
Yes.
I want you to be the #1 YouTube channel.
Yes. And so then tell us a little about how did you first encounter the Enneagram and fall in love with it?
So when I was in the Bay Area to study comparative religions, I had some neighbors that became my godparents when I went to the Catholic Church for a while, which is a whole other podcast.
Great. We'll have you back.
And they are good friends with Father Richard Rohr. And this was in the early 90s, and I was newly married. I was in my young 20s. With the influence of these neighbors that became good friends, and they introduced us to Father Richard in person, but also through his tapes and books and things like that he had produced on the Enneagram. At the time, being newly married, I was in a place of, who's this person that I just committed my life to? Seemed so great at the time, Also away from my parents and family of origin in Southern California, living up in Northern California, having a little bit of physical distance, I was at a place where I started really questioning a lot of what my parents did and who they were and choices they made. So in this time when I was really questioning my parents, my siblings, myself, I think the Enneagram came into my life at just that perfect time to help me understand people in a deep way. So at the time, my father and I particularly were having real struggles with each other, just not understanding each other. And the Enneagram, it's not an exaggeration to say that gave me my father back. It's huge. I mean, it helped me understand him in a really deep way, which it's almost like I got an operating manual to who this person is. So knowing his language, how to speak to him, our relationship became so much better. So on a personal level, that's what's motivated me to teach it.
So most of our listeners will know what the Enneagram is, but we want to be welcoming. So if someone's like, the Myers-Briggs, I don't really like personality quizzes. And I understand it to be quite different, but you have the language to actually explain how's the Enneagram different than all these other things that kind of float around for a couple years.
Right, exactly. I mean, you get the cheesiest things in like Cosmo magazine or whatever,
Or like, I'm Gryffindor.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, not that the Myers-Briggs is cheesy. I think that one has its place. You learn it and you're like, oh, okay, done. Like I'm an introvert, you're an extrovert. Like, okay, whatever. There's not, it doesn't go that far. And I think it's because the Myers-Briggs generally talks about behavior and a little bit about motivation, but mostly about behavior, what kind of behavior you're drawn to, where you feel most comfortable, what feeds you, what doesn't, that kind of thing. And so when you say it, enough said, it's kind of like going to the Grand Canyon. You look at the canyon, you're like, okay, cool. It's canyon. Yeah, not a lot to do here.
As promised.
The Enneagram has, I think, just a much deeper focus in that it's not about behavior. It's about motivation, deep unconscious motivation. And so we're like an iceberg that goes deeply into an ocean of the unconscious. And so Myers-Briggs talks about the iceberg above the water that you can see. Okay, cool iceberg. But when you look deep into the drive, the unconscious drive that we all share, but we share different ones, there's so much more to discover about ourselves and one another, and so much more to learn to appreciate, and areas of growth and need of transformation for sure as well. Part of the reason it's a little more difficult to teach the Enneagram than the Myers-Briggs is because the Myers-Briggs, you could basically know your type by taking a test. There's quantifiable data that you can gather in a test and add up the numbers of whatever and see if you're more of a judger or a perceiver. The Enneagram is not like that because it's not about quantifiable data. It's not about hardcore tests and answers. People that talk to me about it say, well, can I take a test? You can, but it's not going to be very good or very useful, I think. I think it might narrow down some patterns for sure, but the Enneagram has been taught for hundreds, if not thousands of years through storytelling, through the oral tradition. And it's still, I think the best way to learn it is because you feel out energies and tendencies. And, oh, I can see, like when I talk about each type, I talk about like, okay, my grandmother's a 2. Let me tell you about that. And people go, oh my gosh, I'm married to your grandmother, like, or my daughter is just like your husband, or, it's because there's a certain way, an orientation of moving through life. And we understand that by talking about it less through the quizzes and things like that. The other thing I want to say about people that would say, I don't like the personality test. I don't like putting me in a box kind of a thing. Like you're more of a Gryffindor. That's a Gryffindor box. Totally. And the point is we're free in Christ. I mean, we say this all the time as Christians that, we're not bound by anything. I mean, that's the point of Easter. Like death and sin can't even hold us down. We can't be held down by some personality study. The Enneagram's point is not to say I'm this number and so therefore I must always be like this. It's to say there's a big wide world out there of choices, but when I go unconscious, by default, most naturally put my own self into a box. And so the Enneagram is here to describe the boxes we already are putting ourselves in and showing us ways to break free. So Enneagram is not a prison. I get it. It looks like it. It is not. It is a plan to break out of the prison, to put yourself in.
So as somewhat of an expert in the Enneagram, you could tell some stories. People settle into a number or two as they are hearing the stories. And then as you go deeper over time, you would have ways or additional stories to like, I'm a 3 and Ruth is a 4, like how we could get out of our self-imposed box. You have additional stories for each of our numbers.
Right.
Help us right now.
Exactly.
I mean, I can.
Sorry, all the other listeners.
I mean, I can just give like a basic example of that. As a 6, I'm a 6 on the Enneagram. Each type has wings. So the wings are the 2 that are next to you around the circle. For a 6, my wings are 5 and 7. And so it's helpful to know which one feels the most dominant. So somebody that already knows the Enneagram, I realize that your listeners that don't know the Enneagram, they have no idea what I'm talking about. And it's annoying to hear people talk in numbers. The reasons we do, it's not to have insider language. It's because the researchers are calling the 6 all these different names, all these different titles, and the 2 and the 4 and the 3 and all these things. So one researcher can call the 3 the achiever, another researcher can call the 3 the performer, another researcher the networker. So it's easiest for people to teach it just to say, look, let's just call it a 3. Let's just go to the number. So I realize, and I apologize to people that don't know the Enneagram. But let's say you do know the Enneagram. So I'm talking to people here that, have a basic understanding. So a 6's wings are 5 and 7. So it's helpful to know which one is probably the most dominant wing. For me, the most dominant wing is 5. So then what's helpful is to try to balance the 6 with the other non-dominant wing, which would be the 7 in my case.
So you need to go have fun spontaneously.
Yes, and it never would occur to me.
Right, because it's not dominant.
Which is why it's so good to have golden retrievers into play and things like that, because it doesn't really occur to me. But the wings of each number give the number specifically what they need. So for the 4, that would be the 3 and 5. For the 3, that would be the 2 and 4. Specifically what they need to not disintegrate, but to integrate. The disintegration and integration is shown by all those lines all over the whole picture. And so if like as a 6, nervous and anxious that I can be, if I try to just jump to my point of integration, which is the peaceful 9, that's too far of a jump.
So you just go to 7 a little bit.
Trying to balance the wings is an easier and doable thing to do by leaning specifically into the non-dominant wing. It gives you what you need to naturally be more integrated.
I
That
feel
is
like a
very cool.
professor of comparative religions definitely has a 5 in
I
them.
know, right? How could I not see it? I asked my kids one time which wing, and they're like, Mom, come on. I know, Dawn, you're an incredible life coach. The best coaches are 3s. They are.
Here we are.
And Ruth,
Yeah.
I didn't know you were a 4, but today I'm thinking creativity. I've never really thought about in terms of creativity. I'm like, she's probably a 4. But so, I mean, you
Yeah.
can guess what people are. But the point is, if somebody is leaning into creativity and artistic things, likely they're either a 4, have a very strong 4 wing. If somebody is leaning into life coaching and they're able to kind of cheerlead people and help them break past their boundaries, likely they're a 3. And the cool thing about the Enneagram is it helps us appreciate and really love each other and see the gifts and skills everybody has.
So can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, you said that you tell stories. Is that a lot of what your retreats are about that you lead for the Enneagram?
Yeah, I do. And so if somebody wants to retreat, it depends on, like, are we talking about 2 hours or 3 days? Or a 6-week series, what time frame are we talking about? And if it's longer, then yeah, more stories. And I have people, I have friends, and I have family members that are willing for me to talk about them. And I try not to embarrass anybody. Just like when I'm preaching, I try not to embarrass anybody from the pulpit. But things that kind of illuminate how an 8 would handle something and what would be helpful for an 8, as an example, and what it would look like to see an 8 in a moment of disintegration or an 8 in a moment of integration, or who are some famous people that we all have heard of. I read a list of people that are 8s and I ask the people, don't write these names down, just listen as I read this list of celebrities or politicians or whatever. Let the kind of energy fall upon you, and intuitively you'll know who I'm talking about. So after I read a list of 8s of 30 people, then I say, you kind of get the energy? And the students go, oh yeah, totally get the energy. It's totally different from a 2 or a 1 or, totally different. We walk side by side in different worlds. We're not the same human beings, but we can understand that because you all know 8s and all the other types.
Oh, yeah. I have a person in my life that is if I want to remember what a certain number is, I'm like, oh yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
helps. It does help. It helps to
It's a
have a
signpost for me.
person, at least one for each,
Yeah.
to go, oh yeah, here's their strengths. And also I've seen, if you know them well, I've seen their weaknesses. We all have them. It's generally the same thing. It's just open on.
I've been familiar with the Enneagram for quite a while. I'm still surprised when I come across people who haven't heard of it. And so I'm wondering, is it possible for you to say just a few sentences about each type?
Oh, sure. There are 9 basic types. And this does not mean you have to be a certain way. We all have all the tendencies. It's just that one way is how we lead in the world. It's front. We're forward moving in one way. 3 of them are more heart-centered. 3 of them are more head-centered. And 3 of them are more gut or body-centered. Obviously, we all have head, heart, and gut. I ask students sometimes to put their hands on their head and kind of feel like as if they were leading with this energy forward, what that would feel like. And then their heart, what that would feel like leading with the heart energy forward, and then like down on their stomach or their gut. What would that feel like? Because we all have all of it. It's just that one is most natural. So the 2, 3, and 4 are the heart types. This is like a huge generalization. But the 2s, think of the people that are the servants, the caregivers, the preschool teachers, those who like to help and love and be of service, even if they're in the background. Now, the weakness of these incredibly heart-centered people, like nurses, a lot of nurses are 2s, the weakness is that this is the energy that's so common and by them that they can do it all day, every day, and they just drop from exhaustion and maybe even get resentful that people aren't noticing or loving them back. They can also feel pride, like savior complex.
I'm so helpful.
Yeah, exactly. So then it's like, well, is that really loving? All of us have a challenge with kind of the dark side of our strength. 3s are known to be achieving and competent and kind of the valedictorians and the trophy winners and the stars and feeling comfortable in that role. In fact, feeling very uncomfortable if they're not in that role. 3s sometimes say, if I'm not first place, I feel like a failure. So that amount of pressure on their own self is huge to always be the best and the brightest and the boldest. The United States has a very 3-ish culture.
Yeah, I fit it. And I'm in New York City. I went all in.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And when I teach the Enneagram, I talk about countries that often exhibit that kind of energy. The energy of the 3 is very US, and there's not seen as a problem. Interestingly, the 3s that I know are often the ones who are most resistant to the Enneagram. 3s and 4s, funnily enough, 3s often are because they're in the United States and they haven't always felt a difficulty with being a 3 in this country. It's kind of like, what's the problem? Why do I need to learn how to do anything else?
Right.
Because it's rewarded in the United States. Again, broad stereotypes that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But threes can learn that they're not just loved for what they do and how they perform or how they're seen, but they're truly loved for who they are if they did nothing, if they earned nothing, if they achieved nothing. That's a big challenge for a three. They also are incredible cheerleaders of other people to be their best. And I have threes in my life that are just the kindest, most loving people because they're really mature and not just seeking out their own validation. Fours are often known as either artists, very symbolic thinkers. The most profound music, art, dance, theater that we have is from fours, generally. Also, fours are often psychologists, psychotherapists, people that are able to go with other people into great depths of pain. They're not threatened by that like the rest of the world. Fours sometimes don't like the Enneagram because they really want to be special.
My main fours all say.
Yeah. And the Enneagram can sound to a four like, wait a minute, I'm not like 1/9 of the population. I'm totally unique. That sense of wanting to be special can be hurtful to fours because they might feel like, why am I lonely or different than everybody else, as they also want to be special. So they can envy other people as well. My mother was a four. She's passed away. She was a clinical psychologist. She never had a sense of saturation with other people's pain. So if people wanted to talk about whatever they were going through, she would listen to them and really give them a sense of accompanying them. She was wonderful that way. So the 2, 3, and 4 can wrestle with, am I enough without being loving and serving, winning everything, or special? So the heart-centered people can deal with shame. The 5, 6, and 7s are in the head center. The head-centered people more deal with fear. And so the 5 deals with fear by pulling away, observing the world, but feeling like the world is asking too much of them and they wonder if they're competent enough. So they go into like heavy research mode. Maybe when I research enough, maybe when I learn enough, maybe when I study enough, that I'll have what it takes to deal with that big world out there. So think of Albert Einstein and researchers or computer people or people like that. The 6 is also afraid, less of a sense of competence or lack of competence, more of a sense of the world is really scary. There are thunderstorms and people driving crazy on the freeway and there's airplane crashes and there's just the sense of like the boogeyman's out there. So what a 6 does is they also are analyzing and thinking like a 5, but they pull away like a 5 and then they go out like a 7. They kind of go back and forth a lot. 7s go much more out into the world as an adventurer. I'm going to deal with anxiety that is in me by getting busy and active in the world. Almost sometimes it could be even manically active in the world because the anxiety is less of the world out there and more anxiety could come up within me and I can't deal with it. So then the 8 is just kind of large and in charge. You know, I have a sense of power, born with it. My little girl, I mean, she's 21 now, but when she was a tiny baby girl, she was like a little Miss Ava Perón. You're all here to obey me, right?
Yeah.
So her,
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
yeah. So her task is to realize that sense of natural leadership and power can be overwhelming to others. She could easily steamroll others and then she alienates people or she could get fired from a job. I mean, she's so strong. So she needs to learn and is learning all the time how to channel that in service. Mother Teresa was an 8 integrated into 2, serving others, not just like bullying people. The 9 goes on automatic pilot with their energy, their gut-centered energy, wanting to be harmonious and meld and mix with people. They easily mirror other people's feelings and other people's opinions. The task for them is to wake up to themselves and to know what they want, who they are, not just go along and get harmony with the world, but like have goals, live on purpose. And then the 1, sometimes it's called the reformer. Martin Luther might have been a 1. A lot of reformers are wanting on principle to do the right thing and at great personal sacrifice. Joan of Arc was probably a 1, doing what's right for the sake of what's right, not for applause, but being a real strong critic toward others that aren't doing that and a very strong critic to themselves, very, very hard on themselves. To know this is so helpful because with all of these types, then if they're in our lives, and they all are, we can have such compassion knowing people are struggling and they're not broadcasting it most of the time, but people are really struggling and we're all kind of used to our own struggles. So it's not like we're all going and seeing therapists about it either. We're like, oh yeah, I deal with shame or I deal with anxiety of the head child types or the gut types often deal with anger. And all of us deal with all of it, but those particular issues are harder for other people to let go of sometimes or drop or transform. So it gives us then a sense of great compassion for what our neighbors, our friends, our family are going through, and a compassion for ourselves. So that was about as abbreviated as I can.
But it was really helpful part of this if this is their first introduction.
And there's so much more. I mean, I've studied it for 30 years and I will study it the rest of my life because it goes really in depth and it's very helpful.
Do you see people commonly misdiagnose themselves?
Yeah.
Are there common mistakes people make in diagnosing which number they are?
And getting, I mean, this is a little more like 2.0, but because like 1.0 is to look at the Enneagram in terms of there's 3 that are heart-centered, 3 that are head-centered, and 3 that are gut-centered. 2.0 is to look at the understanding that there are 3 that are in the positivity triad, 3 that are in the competency triad, and 3 that are in the intensity triad. So for instance, the 2, 7, and 9, they're all in the positivity triad. There's 1 that's in the heart, that's the 2, 1 that's in the head, that's the 7, 1 that's in the gut, that's the 9. And that's the case with the competency triad and the intensity triad. So if somebody says to me, I think I'm a 7, and then I ask questions like, why do you think that? And what seems to ring true about that? Sometimes, because I have done this for so long, I'm picking up on energy, talk style, things like that. And I'm thinking, I think they might be a 9, but I can understand why they might say they're a 7 because they're in the positivity triad. Or let's say Dawn says, I think I might be a 4, and she starts talking and I think she might be a 3, but I'm like, oh, she's got a really strong 4 wing. Or somebody said Mother Teresa, I'm talking to Mother Teresa, and she says I might be a 2. So it's because she's very integrated. Or conversely, somebody might be very disintegrated. So there's usually a reason why people are confused. And when you have conversation, and I mean, I'm doing a lot of the talking now, but if I'm talking with somebody that wants to know, I ask questions and I just really listen to their answers, their energy, the amount of hesitation they give to different answers, because sometimes they'll easily answer and other times they're kind of confused by the question. All of those are clues.
This is so interesting. Do you get called on a lot by church staffs and things to do retreats, or what are the most common retreats you do?
I have done church staff. The most common is a women's retreat. And I mean, I'm happy to teach it to men too, but there's just a lot of women's retreats that are interested in that. And I say to them, if it's only like a day and a half or 2 days, you're going to either get very little from this, or you're going to need to buckle up your seatbelt because we're going to just like drink it from a fire hose. And what I find is that people are really open and receptive and kind of get it, because I learned it over a long period. I assume just getting all this stuff at once is going to be overwhelming, but they're fine and they get it. Every now and then somebody's confused, and then I talk to them later over the phone or Zoom and kind of clear up some things. The only time I taught it where it was just ridiculously confusing was when I was first teaching this in the late 90s, because I was teaching at a Catholic high school and I taught this to teenagers. They were seniors in high school and it didn't work well. About half of them could figure out what type they were, but about half of them had no idea and really struggled and were kind of upset that they didn't know. I realized when you're a teenager, your ego formation has not completed yet, really. You're still kind of wrestling with who you are. You're trying on personalities, things like that. Sometimes we can, like I saw this with my children when they were little, different tendencies, but I was with them all the time. So with these teenagers, they just weren't ready. And so I will never teach teenagers or younger the Enneagram again, because I think it frustrates deeply some of these people. And yet when I teach like women's retreat, even if the women are super elderly and have never heard of anything about that, they're like, oh yeah, I've always been a 9 for decades.
They see the pattern.
Yes. And it's not like they're struggling. They're like, oh yeah, I could have told you that. Oh, it's great.
Could you tell us a little bit about who are some of your favorite creative people?
I love creative people. I'm not wired like a 4 to think in terms of creativity and having that kind of artistic bend to creativity. I don't even really think in that kind of way. But when I think about people that are creating, I really do admire some folks. And the people that I admire most of all are the ones who seem relaxed. And I think that might be me trying to integrate toward 9 because I'm sometimes not very relaxed. I think of Maya Angelou. And when she gets up to to speak. I mean, she's a brilliant writer and she's done so many wonderful things that aren't public speaking. But in her speaking, she just seems so calm and peaceful and like she's just embodying the creative spirit in her. I also heard her say one time, if you're ever anxious, which, she's speaking my language if she's talking about anxious. She said, if you're ever anxious when you get up and speak, ask your ancestors to be there with you, just to stand with you and support you, kind of hold your hand as you speak. I was like, oh my goodness, that's just, yes. I admire Marianne Williamson as well. She also embodies who she is. And she speaks and she writes of knowing a woman's worth. And that just totally speaks to me. I know somebody in my synod where I serve who's extremely relaxed all the time. She just, like, when she posts on Facebook, she doesn't post about some huge cause she's fighting for. She just shows like things that she's doing with her life. And it could be like sitting in a garden, reading a good book or playing with the dog. That kind of peacefulness calls to me because I believe that when we're in that state of being open to the spirit, creativity flows in and then out and through us. When we're conversely in the kind of hustle culture of pushing and striding, I think sometimes or I'll just speak for myself, sometimes if I'm pushing so hard, I could end up resisting in that effort to create, resisting like the spirit, the still small voice that can come into me and then through me.
I'm curious about when you wrote your book. How was that process for you? When you say you don't feel like you're the most creative person, how did that go?
Yeah. I think it helped me to think of it as no big deal, that I didn't need to do this for anybody. Nobody expected a book from me. In fact, the reason I wrote it was I'd always kind of felt like it was part of my call from God to write my spiritual journey. And I wrote it during lockdown. And so my pastoral duties went way down. Like I couldn't go see anybody in the hospital or anything. And I was recording worship and I was calling people, making sure that they were okay and doing some things on Zoom. But I couldn't do what I normally do as a pastor. So I had all this time and I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't know. I have this energy and he's like, go somewhere. And so I liked taking any kind of expectations off of my shoulders and saying, nobody expects this. Nobody's going to be mad at me if I don't produce a book, like no big deal. And it could happen or not. And so it didn't have to be, I didn't need to be paid for it, like all those expectations. And then I got a book published by Chandler Bolt, and he talked about how to write a book and self-publish. And it's a very small book. So I thought, okay, I can read this. And I didn't read chapter 2 until I had done what chapter 1 said to do.
So you're just step by step.
I wasn't going to intimidate myself. I wasn't going to ramp up my own anxiety by looking at the whole picture and getting overwhelmed. I was going to do what he said and just follow. And, sixes love having an authority figure to follow. I mean, for good or for bad, and it could be a bad thing for sure. But if you find an authority figure that you trust and kind of go, okay, I'm going to trust process. And so I did what he said to do in each chapter. And so day by day, I put in my schedule. I was going to write from 9 to 12 every day, somehow, just 3 hours a day. And all of a sudden, I'm like, how'd this happen? There's a book in front of me. And it actually didn't take that long. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks. And then, of course, I had to go through the editor and all the formatter and all of that. I don't feel like I have another one in me. I feel like that was what I was called to do.
That was it. That was the book.
That was it.
Love it.
Well, now looking as you think about your current projects or perhaps projects that you're thinking about for the future, is there anything that Dawn could give you coaching on today?
Yeah. So now I'm in a great call in my church and I love these people and they really get me and really support me. And it's an 80% call, which we have worked out so that I can have 20% to do my own other things. And primarily what I'm wanting to do is to teach the Enneagram. I just wrote an article that just came out in this month's Gather magazine on the Enneagram. And I have a website and I'm doing a class. It's a challenge for me to put things out there and not feel like I'm bragging, which I think that a 6 doesn't like standing out above the crowd
because it's unsafe.
It feels vulnerable. It feels like I'm boasting. The 3s that I know don't seem to worry about that or are more comfortable with that. How would you coach somebody to just kind of own that?
Yeah. I had a post about this like earlier this week.
Really?
Just scrolled. Yeah.
Uh-huh,
That
yeah.
although I am a 3, I feel very strongly the messages of our shared subculture that women aren't allowed to show off or boast or
Right.
too big for your britches. Like, what even is that? But I had a helpful framework given to me by someone else, so I can't claim this. I just baked brownies. That's why it's in my brain. I can smell the brownies. People came over, they walk in, and of course, the smell is very strong of the brownie.
Yeah.
And one of the people was an 8-year-old girl, and she's like, when can we have the brownies? And I was like, they're 300 degrees. We're going to give it a minute. But how rude would I be to say, I baked these brownies, you can smell it, but sorry, you can't have it. And so to think of your Enneagram expertise as reaching the people with that smell, and they're coming at you going, give me more. Like this 8-year-old girl's dying for the brownies, like chin on the counter as though she's going to watch them cool.
Yeah, that's good. Now, what if you were charging for the brownies?
Yeah. I had to get to a place where money is just a placeholder.
Right.
If I charge very little, it undercuts every other coach.
Good point.
And all the people out there charging $25 are actively hurting me.
That makes a lot of sense.
I've been doing it more than 20 years. I have 2 master's degrees. So you have this and more in what you're talking about. We wouldn't go to a lawyer.
Yeah.
You know they went to law school. You want what they have. They made your life easier and did
Right.
something. And so the problem becomes like thinking it's not as valuable as what a lawyer's doing. And I'm saying it is. You're unlocking people's entire relationships with everyone around them and all of humanity.
Preach, sister.
That's worth some money.
You know, I come to think this isn't about me thinking it's not valuable. It's that I'm going through a shift of when I taught at a college and before that at a high school and now serving in churches. Those are all basically jobs where we agree on service in exchange for income. And then I don't have to think about it. Then it's direct deposited my paycheck into my account as I'm just there preaching on Sunday or teaching a class. And I'm not thinking, how is this equated with this money? Like it doesn't equate in my mind. And so now that I'm putting out services like in an entrepreneurial way, this is very new to me. And so I have to be like, hey, this is what I can do. And also this costs money.
Yeah.
Like, is this
my favorite book on it? Do you know Jen Sincero? She's an author.
I
Seer,
should do
or
it
whatever,
again.
if it's helpful.
Because I did the You're a Badass and then I went to the You're a Badass and making money. And I thought, wow, she doesn't hold back in asking for payment for her services at all.
I'll just tell you, here I am living. Like there are people who will pay.
Yeah.
And some of the people are not your people.
Yeah.
If everyone's saying yes, you're not charging enough.
Yeah, good point.
You can have some free resources available for people who are unable to engage, but it gives it worth.
Well,
there are people who will only do it if it costs
yeah,
more.
you're good. No wonder you're a coach. Goodness gracious.
I know.
I'd love to coach you more. I don't mean to be an advertisement, but here it is. I'm an Enneagram 3.
Yeah, that's true. Do you use the Enneagram in your coaching?
I have a 6-month group called Discern by Doing. And about a month in, we talk Enneagram. And we then, sometimes they are between 2 numbers, as you brought up, you know, as they kind of look through. And I have some different questions to help them get there. But then I have them look up and tell the rest of the group how best to help them.
Oh, perfect.
And the groups are very
Living
small,
at it.
so people can track it.
Yeah.
It's like 4 to 6 people in the group, so they can retain, you know,
That's
what
really
everybody
nice.
is.
Yeah. And I love that, you know, how do you best help? Because there's part of me, like as a 6, there's part of me that can hear somebody encouraging me to be brave. But I can take that in small, like bite-sized pieces. And one of the things I love about my husband, who's a 9, very relaxed, peaceful, calm. And I love that he doesn't push me to go on roller coasters. I love that when I say I'm too scared. And also, I don't need a roller coaster to be self-actualized.
This is not the fear I need to get over.
And then he's always like, then don't go on the roller coaster. No big deal. It's fine. His granting permission to me, so to speak, to not do what I'm afraid of makes me go, well, I have to do like a little roller because there's no push.
I'll do that.
Yeah. So I love that because with somebody else, maybe an 8, a challenge would be, I can deal with that. Like, of course I can do a roller coaster. You know, we're all made differently. And so I love that to ask each person, 'cause what I would share is, how do you best help me if I'm really afraid? Please don't push me to not be afraid or to like make fun of the fear or whatever. It's something I'm really struggling with. So that would be a very different thing coming from maybe a non-6. I don't want to be talked out of my fear sometimes, but other people do.
Maybe.
Yeah. So that's really good. You do
Not-
that on Instagram, Dawn. I've seen your videos and you're like, here's what happened to me. And I'm like, dang, that's good. But I never get from you a sense of pushiness, which as a preacher, it's really important that when we give those stories and examples, we're not being moralistic or pushy or preachy, but just like, here's a story, take the wisdom if it works. Take it up with the Holy Spirit, your thing. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Well, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Honestly.
I always love your content. I'm not always on Instagram.
Well,
Sometimes
yeah,
I have
I
to
get-
get off of it for a while to get other apps on my phone, but I have
Right.
seen some of what you do on Instagram.
So what's the next step?
For working against Jerry, because I did before and I thought it was so cool. So
She goes she found like $50,000 in a weekend.
Isn't that cool?
to mine, but that's great. I
Yeah.
mean, she deserves it. And nobody has a gun to their head that they have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If people wanted to learn more about the Enneagram, is there a book that you tend to direct people to or a favorite resource?
Yes. My favorite book is called The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Richard Riso. It's
Okay.
the one I really learned the most from, and I kind of consider it just the absolute gold standard.
And then how do they come to your class?
My website has the most information, and it also has a
Okay.
registration there for my class. The website
Where is
is
it? Yeah.
stephanielape.com, and the registration is there. I'm teaching this for 5 Wednesdays in July, all of the Wednesdays in July, and that will be in the
Nice.
evening from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. That's an intro class. I've never taught more of like an advanced class for people that already know the Enneagram. So I get into a little bit of kind of borderline advanced stuff toward the end of this class, but I'm thinking of developing something that's more of an advanced class for people that have already taken my intro class so that I know what they know. And on my website also, it shows the 3 areas that I speak on. So one is the Enneagram, one is Christian spiritualities and tradition, and one is comparative religion. So I think that would be the best place to go.
And everybody look, because she's 80% at her call and maybe would travel for the right
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah, I
right?
would travel
Yeah.
or local or Zoom. I mean, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. I love the work that you're doing.
Thank you both. This
Thank
was
you.
wonderful talking with you. So Ruth and Dawn, I wish you all the best.
Thank you for joining us for Created to Creative.
We're so glad that you could join us. And if you haven't yet followed us on social media, please do. And leave us a positive review that helps us share this episode with a friend.
And join our Patreon and look into Ruth's ConseCrate boxes.
And I think Dawn still has an opening for coaching, and you don't want to miss that. So contact Dawn if you want to make some changes in your life.
And go create something.
Go create something.